Mr. Jackson's house. Landon got to work late and soaked from the rain, and he had to go back to the bar after realizing that he'd forgotten his truck there overnight, which only made him even later. When he got there, he saw Law first, who was standing inside the small cabin where their headquarters, as his boss Mark liked to call it, were. Landon looked down at himself, then laughed. Law laughed back. "You're 2 hours late," he grinned. "What gives?" Landon shrugged, placing his gear onto the floor next to him. "Overslept." "Oh, really?" pried Law. "Yeah," Landon shrugged. "Because I heard that you laid into some poor old man last night." Landon looked at him intently, as much of his memory from the night before had come back to him. He had it coming. Did he now? Yeah, he did. Law shook his head and looked at Landon more seriously. "What were you doing there anyway? Getting plastered?" Landon shrugged. "What if I was?" "Fucking idiot," Law mumbled. Law was a little like an older brother to Landon. He was wiser, smarter, and taller than he was, and he was always having to piece Landon back together. Ever since he lost the house, especially, but before that too, back in high school and college. Yeah, Landon was a piece of work, all right. He was always getting into some kind of trouble, though he wasn't stupid. No, not at all. In fact, he graduated both high school and college. He was very smart, he just didn't care, which fortunately for his schoolwork didn't have too much of a negative impact on him there. Still, he couldn't find a job with his engineering degree. Neither could Law, which was why they were working in a lumberyard together. Right on the front lines, as they call it, making new land, which farmers would use for planting crops soon after they were finished with it. Exciting stuff, in a way. They enjoyed it, and although it was a bit laborious at times, it was kind of fun to tear down a forest. It gave them a lot of time to think, and feel, really. Still, despite this, Landon had his issues. Not an idiot. No, Law shook his head. You're not, so why are you acting like one? Landon shrugged. How long are you on break? Mark's gonna want us out there soon. Law clenched his jaw, picked up his gear from the floor. Landon did the same. Come on, he said. I'll show you where we're at. Landon nodded, walking towards the door. But first tell me something, said Law, putting his arm out and stopping Landon. What? Landon asked. Did you do it? Do what? Asked Landon, though he already knew that he'd heard about it. Did you rape someone while you were drunk last night? Landon scoffed loudly. I'd never do that. You know that, Law. Law scoffed back. Then let's go. They left the cabin and walked towards the area that Law had been clearing before he'd taken his break. By the end of the day, they'd cleared a lot of it, though it felt like they'd barely made a dent. There was so much left to go. Breathing deeply, they both took off and made their way to their trucks. When they got to where their trucks stood parked, Landon shouted out to Law and asked him, "Hey, I'm going to the bar. You want to come with or not?" Law sighed. "You know I'm not going to let you go alone after last night." "Attaboy," shouted Landon, laughing. "Come on." He hopped into his truck and took off. Law muttered under his breath, and Jenny wanted to do that thing tonight. He put his truck into gear and drove off after Landon, reaching the bar soon after. He walked in to see Landon sitting next to someone who was talking to him rather intensely. He could hear them. "Landon Peterson's your name." "Well, all right, son." He patted Landon on the shoulder. "If she said that you didn't do it, then as far as I'm concerned, you didn't." "Say," he started just before Law interrupted them. "Landon," he yelled from across the room as he approached the two. "Everything cool, guys?" "Everything's cool," replied Landon. "Mr. Jackson was just about to say something, though. You interrupted." "Right," said Law. That's my bad. Go ahead, Mr. Jackson." He pointed at the man. Mr. Jackson laughed. What I was about to say was, why don't you come to dinner tonight? My daughter Lily is making homemade spaghetti and meatballs. It's very good." He looked at him, his icy blue eyes wide in hope of a yes. Law looked at Landon, smiling, obviously happy to see that the man wasn't pissed the hell off at him about his daughter being raped. Tragic as it was, the man seemed to be reasonable. Landon noted that Mr. Jackson was much calmer than the night prior, probably on account of what had happened to his daughter. In fact, he was probably looking for some sort of support. He was new in town, after all, and he didn't know too many people. And although Landon had beaten the living Christ out of him the night before, still he seemed eager to have him over for dinner. Landon nodded. "I appreciate the offer, but you don't think it's inappropriate given what I did to you last night?" Thought it was weird that you showed up to work today. Figured they'd press charges. Guess not, added Law. Go ahead, keep talking. Mr. Jackson smiled, stretching the nose cast that rested easily on his face. Forgive and forget. Besides, I was being a rather idiotic drunk last night, and I know it was your house, a police officer named Joseph told me. He looked at Landon, his icy eyes shockingly intent. I'm sorry, Landon, a police officer named Joseph told me. That's fine, nodded Landon. That's fine. I'll have to decline, thank you. Law looked at him perplexedly and hit him on the arm. Go, you prick. Mr. Jackson smiled. Listen to your friend. It'll be fun. Landon sighed. I don't really want to go back into that house. Mr. Jackson sighed. Landon, you're going to have to get over it one way or another. Christ, he told you all of it? He asked Landon. Mr. Jackson nodded. We have beer. He'll come, said Law, shaking Landon. Won't you, bud? Landon shook his head. Fine. Great. Stop by on your way home or head back to your house to get a shower. You're soaked, added Mr. Jackson. Landon nodded. I'll do that, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Jackson patted him on the shoulder. I'm going to have a few more beers before I head out. Wait, Law started. Should you be drinking and driving, Mr. Jackson? Mr. Jackson only winked. You can come too. Once they were done showering, they took Law's truck to Landon's old place, Mr. Jackson's place. When they got there was no vehicle in the driveway. Christ, said Law. It looks like the old man hasn't even left the bar. He put the truck into park and they walked towards the front door to the house. After you, he pointed at Landon to knock. Gee, thanks, started Landon. Hey, you're the one who raped her. Landon gave him a nasty look. Right, replied Law. Not a very good joke. I almost got arrested, you know. You did get arrested, Landon. You're lucky you didn't do anything to this poor girl. You didn't do anything, right? How many times? I got it, assured Lex. Law. Just knock on the damn door, alright? Landon knocked 3 times. It was but a moment before came the answer. 17-year-old Lily standing on the other side, wearing an apron on her person and an oven mitt on her hands. Hello, she said silently, looking at Landon. I was just pulling the rolls out of the oven. Can we come in? Asked Landon. Oh, sure, she said. I'm sorry, I forgot, she blushed. Landon shrugged. It's fine. Where do you want us? The kitchen table's fine. She glanced at Law. Who's your friend? This is Lawrence Northern, Law for short, said Landon. Hi, Law waved. I'm sorry to hear about what happened to you. Oh, she said, lowering her head a little and looking up at him somewhat apprehensively. That's okay. It's not, said Landon. Let's try to talk about something else, yeah? Okay, nodded Law. I'm sorry. Lily shook her head. It's fine, come in. As he walked into the kitchen, Landon noticed something off about her left leg, and although he wasn't at first sure about it, it soon became apparent that it was a prosthetic. The poor girl approached the oven, placed the rolls on the counter, and stirred the sauce pot, which boiled steadily on the stove. After she was done, she turned and ushered towards the kitchen table. Sit, she said. It was strange for Landon being in his old home and seeing how rearranged everything was. Nonetheless, Landon and Law sat down. Thank you, said Law, while Landon remained silent. Lily didn't speak much after that, so the three of them sat in silence for a while, Law giving Landon a look that said something akin to, I wonder if we should have come after all. Landon shrugged it off and, shaking his head, began to talk to Lily. Lily, he said. She stopped what she was doing, which wasn't much, as everything was pretty much ready, meatballs and all. And come to mention it, she seemed to be stalling, probably so she wouldn't have to speak, as she was a very shy girl, and replied to Landon in a sort of high-pitched squeal that was obviously unintended. Yes, she replied, and then hiccuped, covering her mouth in obvious embarrassment. I was just wondering where your dad is, said Landon, giving her an odd look. Where is he? She shook her head, causing her hair to sway from side to side, and answered, I'm not sure. Do you want me to call him? Landon shook his head. No, it's fine. I'm just wondering if you knew. There was silence again. So, said Law, ending it. Smells great. Oh, thanks, Lily replied, looking down at her feet and holding her right arm with her left hand as if someone had just punched her there. Yeah, said Law in his usual cheeriness. So if your dad's going to be late, not to be rude here, maybe we should start? She just looked at him, the same look of apprehension she had with Landon at the jail. Law waited a moment and let out an anxious chuckle. Yeah? Lily said, Landon with a sigh, you're so shy, let's eat. Law punched him. Ow, said Landon. What? Shut up, said Law. Lily, do whatever you want. Wait Don't wait, just don't listen to this prick. Hey, yelled Landon, almost laughing. Watch it, asshole. Law shook his head, a grin on his face. Yeah, whatever. Lily, do what you want. In a small scuffle, Lily pulled out some plates from the cupboard hanging above into the side of the stove. Then some silverware from the drawers below. Hurriedly, she brought it all over to Landon and Law, who thanked her politely. Setting down a plate for herself, she told them to go ahead and fill their plates up. Neither of the two hesitated at that, as both were very hungry from having worked so hard. When they returned to the table, Lily was seated, hands folded politely in her lap, legs crossed. She sat up straight and seemed very well mannered, which Landon sort of tried to mimic, but which Law matched to a T, to be polite, of course. Awkward as it made the both of them feel. After they'd done so, they began eating slowly at first, but then before they knew it, they were asking for seconds and having more. Lily simply complied, nodded, and tried to smile, though she couldn't quite manage it as she was still far too nervous. It was all rather odd, really, though Landon felt a similar way. He just hid it and showed it instead in a sort of aggressive eating frenzy. But if he were being totally honest, being inside of his old house made him very uncomfortable. And being around a pretty girl like Lily while being there, however shy she was or wasn't, made him nervous. Still, he hid it well, and neither Lily nor his best friend could tell what he was actually feeling. When he finished eating, he thanked Lily. Thank you, he said Landon. It was delicious. Law nodded, still eating. I'm going to have thirds unless he trailed off. Unless your dad's still planning on coming. Lily shook her head and looked down at her hands. She hadn't eaten at all. No, go ahead, she all but whispered. All right, said Law loudly, clearly happy to hear that he could have more. Law got up, leaving Landon alone with Lily at the table. Anxiously, Lily reached out her hand and touched Landon's. Landon looked down at their hands on the table, then back up at her. He pulled his hand away, and Law returned to the table. Lily returned to her slightly recoiled but polite sitting position. She didn't smile, but bit her lower lip nervously. It was all rather difficult to sit through, watching her go through whatever it was she was going through, by their being there in her home. Landon looked at her cautiously as Law gobbled down his food. Why had she touched his hand? Part of him was outraged. He'd just been accused of raping her, and she was touching him like that, and right in front of his best friend. He looked down at the table and gritted his teeth, clenching his hands into fists beneath the tables. Lily noticed and put her head down, seemingly in shame. Law noticed.